Marshawn Lynch or Gavin Newsom? Go. Who would you rather have on the show?
I mean, Marshawn would be a lot more entertaining.
Oh, God, it would, wouldn't it?
He's probably got a lesser shot to be the future president of the United States.
I'm Arizona Family political editor Dennis Welch.
Dennis, fake news Welch. Try to tell the truth.
And this is the Politics Unplugged podcast.
Dennis, if you have a problem with substance abuse, I am more than willing to talk to you anytime you need.
Welcome back to Politics Unplugged. This week, the pre or post July 4th, episode here, since this episode drops after July 4th.
Yeah.
But we're recording it before July 4th on July 3rd.
Yeah.
And I'm joined by Colin. Colin, what are we going to talk about this week? We don't have a guest.
There's something to talk about.
We don't have any planned guests this week, is the thing, because y'all are gone.
Yeah.
It's July 3rd. Any Politico who's left in Arizona right now is busy filing signatures.
Yeah.
Or railing against signatures being filed.
Yes.
And if you're not part of that, you're probably in San Diego, like throwing back a beer,
yes,
eating a taco right now.
Yes.
Which is my happy place.
As I plan to be shortly.
Because that's exactly where you're going, Colin.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to San Diego. I'm going to Ventura. But yeah, I will be eating a taco and staring at the waves sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
Now we're stuck in that weird spot where we thought we should go ahead and knock this pod out now and maybe send it out a little early just in case, we have a different presidential candidate by the time it would normally drop.
So fucking tired of living in interesting times.
God, can they be less interesting, please? And can they get not so interesting when we're about to go on vacation?
Every time, man.
Yeah.
And this whole year has just been a blur.
Yeah, it has. It's already July 4th.
Major shit. Oh, yeah, by the way, happy belated fiscal New Year to everybody in Arizona. If you don't know, the fiscal New Year started on July 1st.
Yeah, big celebrations there.
Did you have any fiscal New Year resolutions this year?
No.
This year?
I guess be more fiscally responsible. I don't know. That'll work.
What would be a resolution? I don't know. Start saving for retirement.
Yeah.
Start building up that old 401k.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing that this year.
So it's Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
We just taped the TV show.
Yep.
Which we're hopeful still has some relevance by Sunday. We don't know. God only knows right now. We're taping this a little later on Wednesday. I don't know if we're going to drop this tonight, tomorrow, wait until Sunday. I'm not sure when this is going to drop, but hopefully it's still relevant by then. By the time we're done recording this, it may not be relevant anymore. Arguably may not be relevant anyway.
You could argue that we're not relevant right now.
Yes. But as we talk, the governor's meeting is today, right?
Okay, so as we're speaking right now, President Biden is still battling fighting to keep his campaign going, right?
Yeah.
I mean, is that fair to say? I mean, he's kind of...
Oh, absolutely.
He's kind of waging a two-front war politically. Obviously, he is, currently the nominee for the Democratic Party. He's coming off a real bad debate.
Yeah.
Historically bad debate. And don't let anybody try to say otherwise. And I don't think many people are.
No. They seem to be falling back on, like Roy Herrera spoke with us today and said it was a bad day. And yes, it was.
And I'm almost tempted to say, don't let anybody say it was just one bad night. They got to prove that it was one bad night at this point because, we'll get into that.
Yeah.
But as we are right now, again, back to, Biden is kind of waging a two-front political war right now because he does have a Republican opponent, former President Donald Trump. But he's also got his own Democratic Party that he's got to deal with and battle on that front, and to keep that party from bailing on him.
Yes,
he's got he's got. I don't want to say a mutiny on his hands because it's not to that point yet. As of right now, at 11:50,
it's not a mutiny.
a.m. on Wednesday.
Yeah.
But
after lunchtime, all bets are off.
all bets are off, man. But I mean, it could get there.
Yes,
Right?
the leaks are coming. There are certainly those who want to see a change and are starting to leak stuff to try and push that change.
Yeah, and my biggest question at this point, and I've been asking, and I'd be interested what the answers you got from the Democrats we were speaking to earlier is what the fuck took you so long? Why wasn't this wrapped up months ago? Why didn't you settle this story months ago? You could have had a real primary process, a campaign, had you decided this early. And there were questions that needed, and if there were questions that were brought up, you could have held a real primary and avoided this entire mess altogether. I was looking at polling from almost a year ago where voters were 70% of voters were concerned that Joe Biden was too old to be president. The voters have been telling Democrats for a long time that this is an issue. They ignored them, and here we are.
And the answer we've tended to hear was that, well, he's the only candidate who could beat Trump. And why? I've never heard a good explanation for why that would be the case.
No.
And if you had started the process earlier, if we had a real primary process, you would have choice into who your candidate would be. And I don't think you have that now. If Biden steps down, it has to be Harris. I don't see a plausible path to anyone other than Harris, which might be fine. But if you thought there was a stronger candidate available than Kamala Harris, we should have done this sooner. And I can only assume that the people around the president thought they could run out the clock and get to November without an incident that made it clear that they neaded to do something.
Did they think Biden or that Trump was so bad there's no way people are going to give him a second chance? Because the polls are certainly these are close elections. I mean, it's going to be a close election no matter who you put on the ticket, the DNR at this point, and that's really playing with fire. And I am just really astounded that they wouldn't have wanted to wrap this or settle this earlier.
Yeah. And I will say poll numbers I always take with a grain of salt.
Sure.
I don't believe, well, let me put it this way. There were 3 polls in a row that got a lot of publicity that showed Trump beating Biden. And if you dove into the numbers on all 3, the numbers for people who actually voted in the last election, Biden was beating Trump.
Yeah.
So people grab what they want to. I'm skeptical of the polling methods. I'm skeptical of the results. I'm skeptical of the numbers that get reported out of those polls. Sure. National polls aren't worth much.
National polls are garbage. It's all about battleground state polls. You got to pay attention to those.
Yes. The one area where I find them interesting is something like how does Biden do versus how Harris does? Because I think you can probably get a more meaningful answer there than in something.
Well, and I think those polls are much more consequential in this moment.
Yes.
Because those are the kinds of polls that the party, the White House, everybody's looking at.
Yes. Democrats have to ask, are we better off right now riding it out with Biden, or are we better off jumping to Harris? Mm-hmm. And if Harris has better poll numbers right now, that's probably a pretty good indication that jumping's not a bad idea.
Yeah, and and I think I've heard this argument too, that it's a sign of a healthier party that Democrats are at least having this conversation right now. Because what Democrats would say is Republicans should be having the same conversation with their nominee, because he's been convicted on 34 felony counts.
Yes.
He's been found liable in civil court for rape and sex abuse. He's facing numerous other felony charges down the road.
Right.
Why, Republicans should also be having that conversation. And they say, well, it's because Democrats are having this conversation now. It's a sign of a healthier party. Do you buy that?
Yeah, but at the same time, at some point the comparison just doesn't matter.
No, and it doesn't. And you also have to ask yourself a question: Biden hasn't given many interviews. He hasn't been the most. I mean, he didn't do the Super Bowl interview.
No.
going back to then. So you got to be wondering, like, did they know that this was always a possibility and just weren't talking about it? Weren't going public with it. Which is fraught with its own problems, if that's the case. Because the American public should have known a lot earlier if this is if this was to paraphrase Nancy Pelosi, was this an episode or was this episodic? Right. And if they knew this was happening, if this had been happening over and over, you should have been telling the American public this.
Yes. And again, I have to assume they thought they could play this out to November and it wouldn't matter.
You can't hide in a presidential campaign.
You really can't. You really can't. And the next morning, he was out on the campaign trail and looked fine, looked good, looked healthy, and that's concerning. That didn't make me feel much better. And I'm not going to medically diagnose anyone, but people who are close to older people who are having mental issues and a decline will tell you that they're a hell of a lot better off in the morning than they are at night.
And there's moments, and this is the job of presidency. You need to be able to project strength and vitality, and in all these things more so than any other office that you vote for. Right. He's got to do more than just be able to shine in a few moments.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, George Stephanopoulos. There's an interview that is supposed to take this week with ABC where he's going to sit down with Stephanopoulos. Bill Clinton's former PR flack.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit whether he looks good or not in that. That doesn't tell me anything.
No, it doesn't. And the people who are defending President Biden and suggesting he should stay in the race will tell you that he's got a very good staff and has done a very good job, and the last 3 years have gone very well, and so you should be less concerned. And I get all of that. But at some point, you have to sit across the table from Vladimir Putin or Macron, whoever.
Or you got to sit. You got to sit in the Oval Office with a couple of key congressional holdouts on a big bill and get those votes.
Yes.
And it comes down to that because the power of the presidency is always the power to persuade, persuade American opinion, persuade members of Congress to do things, persuade foreign leaders. That is where the power of all of that is.
Yeah.
And the one thing I am, a little fed up with is, Democrats telling me, well, look at his record of the past 4 years. I'm like, well, fuck, man, after that debate, it's not about what he did over the past 4 years. It's like, where is he going to be in 4 years?
Yes.
Where's he going to be in a year from now? Because he's not getting better.
No.
From what we saw, and you really got to prove to me that in the American public that you're up to the task. And I know I'll get text messages and calls from Democrats and Democrat sources like complaining to me on how wrong I am. I'm not wrong on this.
No, and I mean, there was a lot accomplished over the last 4 years, 3 years to be proud of, and you could run on. But that only takes you so far. And, it's a great argument if you want to move Harris in. Yeah. And Harris will say, the successes we've had over the past 3 years, I will continue those and build on those.
But let's not talk about the border.
The
borders are. But
the borders are. But
no. That is true. And yes, you do run on your record. Look what I accomplished, and I'll continue to do that. But again, this campaign after that performance, and I don't think we're quote bedwetters. As you're hearing from a lot of folks, in the media, like, oh, they're bedwetters, they're freaking out, they're hysterical. I don't. Historically was a terrible performance. Yes. It is the worst performance by a sitting president in the modern television era.
And and if you want to make those, those are the type of arguments he could make about Obama in his first debate, where he didn't do as well as Romney. He wasn't great.
Yeah,
he was good, but he wasn't great.
Two different universes.
Yes. If you want to, if people were saying they were greatly concerned after that, then you can call it an overreaction. To see Biden's performance and to see his mental state in that performance, to say that someone else should be doing this, That's not an overreaction.
No, it is a different. We like to talk about sports, right? Like
Yeah.
Barack Obama having a bad debate night. He was such an amazing communicator and talented politician, right? You knew he was capable of coming back.
Yeah.
It's like Michael Jordan has an off night.
Yeah. It meant the next night he was going to have 45.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what is this?
Yeah.
This is like the guy at the end of the career, right? Like, I don't even know who to compare that to. That old quarterback that just has lost it.
Yeah.
And has a really bad performance. Like, I don't think they're coming back.
No.
And
when
maybe-
you say, hey, we're going to have another debate, and next time I'm going to finish my sentences. That's an uncomfortable bar to be setting.
Yeah,
I don't like that.
Yeah, I know, and like, look, and I get it too. The criticism I hear from Democrats is, how come you're not focusing more on what Donald Trump had to say? And yes, Donald Trump had some crazy shit to say.
Yeah.
Donald Trump was not making sense on substance. Read the transcripts. It's terrible
Yes.
on substance.
Yes. If you're going strictly on substance, you're going to give it to Biden. Because he
Yes.
said things and Trump didn't. He yelled stuff that made no sense.
Yeah, and
But the sentences were complete.
yes, the sentences were complete. Is that where we're at, America?
Yeah.
Is that where we're at? Damn, man.
And if you're the Democrats at this point, you want the focus to be back on issues, because
Of course.
While Democrats are talking about, can we possibly really run this guy out again, Trump's out there complaining, talking about how there's 30% inflation, and which
It's not. It's 3%. It's 3%. He's talking about electric planes not being able to fly on cloudy days.
Yes, because he apparently does not understand the difference between electrical and solar. In this speech he's given,
and he's still not committing to accepting the results of the election.
Right. If you are a Democrat, you want this campaign to be about the issues, and it's not, as long as people are wondering if your candidate can make it to November.
Yeah. And right now, those are real questions. Look, man, I'm not smart enough, talented enough, or anything to say that I know one way or the other. But it seems like we're in another historical moment.
Yeah.
I don't know how this is all going to play out.
No.
But one thing is that I think is a really compelling argument for Biden to get out is if he really believes that Donald Trump is a true threat to democracy, him and his family need to sit down and really, answer the question, like, if he stays in the race, are they allowing a second Donald Trump administration?
And again, the argument we've heard over and over is he's the only one who could beat him, or Biden is there because he knows he can beat Trump. And then the 78-year-old version of Biden, maybe there was something to that. I don't know.
Well, I mean, if you jettison Biden, Biden steps down. Let's be clear. I mean, it's Biden's decision. He's got the delegates; they are legally pledged to him.
Yeah.
If he steps down, and you go with someone younger. If you go with a Harris, you go with somebody else that's out there, and then overnight, Trump's the old man in the campaign.
Yes.
And then the same questions of age could start asking about Trump. And it clears up it creates new problems. It could clear up some other problems.
Yes.
I mean, you've got Biden has trouble with young voters, particularly when it comes to the Palestinian issue.
Yeah.
Kind of addresses some of that.
Yeah. You are at least getting younger, and I think there is a generation of voters, and it's not even fair to say it's a generation of voters, because I'm a hell of a lot younger than the young voters they talk about. And I look around and go, my God, 78 versus 82? We can't do better than that? We can't do better than a 78-year-old versus an 82-year-old? Yeah. And the party needs to get younger. Both parties need to get younger.
Yeah. And I also think I don't think a brokered convention is the end of the world.
No.
For Democrats. I don't. I think it creates the possibility. I'm not saying it's going to end up well. I have no fucking idea. But I think it does create a possibility where you could have maybe one of the most single-watched political events in modern history. A brokered convention?
Yeah.
Wow. That's...
Yeah.
You'd have 4 or 5 days of real drama in Chicago.
Yeah.
Would there be a short campaign run-up to that? I don't know. I don't know how it all look like. But if you're worried about name recognition, it'll take care of itself. Everybody will know who the Democrat is.
Yeah.
There'll be a ton of attention given to that.
Yeah.
And if the electorate is as divided and calcified as many suggested and say that it is, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Do you see a path that the nominee could be someone other than Harris if they make the shift? Because I don't. I don't see how you make that.
I don't either, and I think that Harris maybe is a bit underrated at this point. I think there's been a lot of effort that has been put in to making her, look bad or to damage her or beat her up over the years, going back to the Democratic primary of 2020.
Yeah.
I don't think she's quite as bad as some of her critics would say.
No.
I mean, she's a woman who won statewide in California.
Yeah.
She's a woman who's, made it to the vice presidency of the United States. I mean, she's an incredibly smart, talented woman to get there. So we'll see.
And a prosecutor, which will appeal to some end of the electorate.
And I think that, had she been on that debate stage the other night, it would have been it'd be a very different story today, obviously.
Yes.
Obviously. But it would have been interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I in a wide open primary field, she was not the most attractive candidate in 2020. Voters made that fairly clear. Mm-hmm. But when it becomes a binary choice, I think a lot of voters would be more enthusiastic about a Harris candidacy than a Biden candidacy going against Trump at this point.
Yeah.
And any of the other names you hear, I mean, the other obvious, I think, name for the Democrats is Gavin Newsom,
who's been running the most august non-campaign campaign.
I think he'd probably be interested if asked.
He's been running a very aggressive non-campaign for forever now.
If he'd be willing to give up that new podcast with Marshawn Lynch that he just announced to become president.
I don't know if I'd give that up, man.
I don't know. It's pretty good.
Marshawn's an interesting cat, dude.
Yeah. But for a variety of reasons, I don't think you can bypass Kamala Harris and go to Gavin Newsom without causing serious problems within your electorate. And I mean, legit issues.
Yeah. Legit.
Black voters, black women voters are going to be really pissed if you pass over a sitting vice president who is a black woman to go to a white guy. And absolutely understandably.
And could that, energize even more? I mean, the country's never had a woman president.
No.
And a lot of people want to see that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Next few days is really going to be telling. Like I said, by the time this podcast drops, maybe all this stuff is settled.
Yeah.
But Joe Biden's got to really shore up his party right now. People are starting to become vocal. You had the first sitting Democratic congressman come out and call him to step aside.
Yeah.
You've got some really terrible polling information that's been coming out. 72% of voters think the Democratic Party would be better with going with somebody else.
Yes.
Leaked polling shows, stuff that was leaked by Democratic firms shows that Biden is losing about 2 points in the key battleground states after this post-debate.
Yeah.
He's got to shore it up.
He does.
And maybe he does. Maybe by the time this podcast drops, maybe we are just bedwetting. Or being hysterical, as critics might say.
I don't feel like I'm a bedwetter when it comes to these sort of things.
No.
I think I'm pretty good at seeing the long game on these things and not freaking out. I've ignored polls, all year. I've kept a pretty even keel on stuff.
Yeah.
And that performance
And yeah,
was really, really, really jarring to see.
it was jarring to see, and I think don't let anybody tell you that it wasn't.
No, yeah,
And,
no,
you know, if you're listening to this, like just stop it, just cut him off. Like no,
yeah,
that was a terrible debate performance.
yes. And when they compare it to Trump's and saying Trump was just shouting lies, okay, and Biden's performance was so bad that we don't have time to break down all of what Trump was saying, and that.
Well, the thing is like, you know, I like to say, maybe I made up this dumb saying, maybe not, maybe I picked it up, I can't remember, but you can't spell news without new.
Yeah.
And what was new from debate night was an incoherent, at times, president.
Yeah.
Sitting president who was incoherent.
Yeah.
The lies or misstatements, however you want to categorize that, the outlandish claims.
Yes.
Are all priced into the Donald Trump product.
Yeah.
If you know, and ask yourself, you're listening to this, if you ran in and told somebody, one of your friend who's politically engaged and knows the issues, and you ran in and say, guess what? Donald Trump made 30 misstatements in 27 minutes.
Yeah.
The reaction would be, huh,
Yeah.
that's not new.
No. Which makes these things so frustrating to cover as a journalist.
Yeah,
It's so hard.
but that's why the Biden thing got so much attention.
Yeah.
Because that's new and that was concerning for folks and his ability to do the job.
Yeah. And Republicans have been hammering the he doesn't know where he is theme for months, but I don't even know that they thought it was legit most of the time.
No, there was no way they thought it was legit because they were already preparing for a good debate performance from
Yes.
Biden, saying that he was going to be all juiced up on.
Yes. They needed to drug test him. He was going
Yeah.
to be on performance enhancing drugs, and just wait, he's going to be really sharp. And when he's really, really good, the reason is he's on drugs.
Yeah.
And
It's like one of the dumbest fucking things I've ever
really
heard, by
was.
the way.
it really, really was.
Really?
It really was.
You know, like Biden's going to be great, said Biden's debate coach Barry fucking Bonds.
Yeah.
Like that was the dumbest shit.
It was really
And
stupid.
I'm sorry if you're listening to this and you fell for that and you really believe that. Good God.
And they kept, we kept seeing videos and photos saying, "Oh, look, he's wandering off into the distance," and they were generally not all that accurate. There was one where he was at an event, I think it was a D-Day event, where there was some sort of thing, and he's walking off, and I know the New York Post cropped it and did it's concerning. Look, he's just wandering off in the distance, staring off into space. And he wasn't. There was a paratrooper that he was talking to. And the paratrooper was off to the side of the event, and he sort of took a few steps over and was talking to that guy.
Good God.
And they cropped the photo, cropping the paratrooper out to say, "Oh, look, he's wandering off into the distance." And it's not true. And and I think it was also D-Day where he leans over to talk to someone on the rostrum, leaning over to put his ear near him, and that turned into, "Oh, look, he's pooping his pants." And I mean, come on.
I know.
So I'm not sure how I got there.
I think we should end there with pooping pants. What do you think? This is fuck it, man.
But yeah, so anyway, my basic point being they kept throwing a lot of bullshit out to say he's not mentally in a good place for this. And then it turns out, well, despite the bullshit you were throwing at us, it turns out, he's actually not.
Yeah. No. And that's why I think, Biden's got a lot of work to do right now.
Yeah.
He's got to show that it was just an episode.
Yeah.
And I don't know. We saw earlier, besides the polls and the voters telling the Democratic Party, like, look, this is a problem. We're not comfortable with this. His age is something else. We heard him, remember he called some press conference or something to address an issue about his mental faculties, and then he got the name of the Mexican president wrong.
Yeah. It doesn't help.
It's like...
So when he sits down with Stephanopoulos, what is he going to have to do to convince people that he's vibrant and on the ball? Because I'm picturing Tom Cruise with Oprah. Or when Tom Cruise started jumping up and down on the couch.
You're being glib.
Do we need Biden jumping up and down on the couch?
Well, I mean, maybe, or just.
I mean, it might help.
Well, how about he's on a treadmill? Maybe he's on a treadmill, like, working out, like, I don't know.
I
just, again, like I said earlier, however that turns out, it's like, I'm not going to be convinced.
Nah, it's hard to imagine. It's hard to imagine there can be something in a sit-down interview that will make you forget what you saw in a 90-minute debate.
Because, Roy reminded me, on the TV show, and I was like, well, almost immediately after, like, the debate, he had an event, I think, in North Carolina. It was planned. It's like he looked on strong there. Like
he did,
and he did, and I'm sure he is sharp and vibrant at times every day.
Yeah. At an event in the morning, I mean, if you are an older person having memory issues and that sort of cognitive decline, you're a hell of a lot better in the morning than you are at night. And my fear is that's what we saw.
Yeah.
And, to people close to me who have had relatives going through that sort of thing lately, they recognized a lot of the looks and mannerisms and things. And that's a really, really hard thing for voters to put aside.
Yeah. Well, why don't we wrap it up there? Good job discussing this, and we're not going out on a limb. So, we could predict what's going to happen, but I fear that would go into the bucket of our bad, horrible, terrible Suns takes.
Do you have any basketball takes? It's been free agency.
Oh, no.
We can end on a bad basketball take.
None.
We've had plenty of them.
None. I have zero. Zero.
Yes. Our habit of predicting something and having it be wrong by the time the podcast drops has been remarkable. So
yeah, I'm not going to go there.
No.
So hope everybody enjoys or has enjoyed. I don't know when this is going to drop. If it drops tonight, I hope you enjoy your holiday. If it drops
Sunday, I hope you had a great 4th. I think we may go early unless I don't know.
Holidays are weird, man.
I mean, if you're listening to this, you know when it dropped. So,
and I hope you appreciate
celebrate accordingly.
This freestyle podcast today. We took you all the way from our immediate reactions to what's happening to Joe Biden, all the way to poop.
Yeah. Enjoy the journey. It's all about the journey.
All about the journey, man. Hey, have a great time. I hope you enjoyed or have enjoyed or will enjoy the holiday, man.
Yeah. See you next week.
Thanks for listening. You can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, the Google Store, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. See you next time.